Hey there, Alan Matthews here again, and this is video number 4 in our Vacances by Yvon Demillac study guide or lesson on this piece. So we have gone through a whole lot in these past 3 videos. We've looked at how to learn it and the process of going through it to where it's really clean right from the very beginning, putting all the good work on the front side so that we don't create all these problems that we then try to fix forever. We talked about how to memorize this piece step by step so that as we're learning it, then we're memorizing it at the exact same time. So we've looked at what the hands did and the different challenges that we can have and some different fingering options to make it more beautiful. And now we're looking at the musicality and the phrasing. And so if you're a more advanced player, then these pieces like this are gold mines for working on phrasing and really working out how you look at phrasing and the different tendencies of music and everything else. So with this then, this might get a little bit more advanced. So if you're a beginning player, then you can ignore all of this if you want to and just work on getting your hands where they need to be. And so, because that's important as well. But as soon as you can, then this stuff is where it's at. This is the gold, and this is the super fun practice. It's much more challenging and requires a lot more control, and that's what builds really good technique, is challenging yourself to do the things that we're going to talk about right now. So with that, let's just jump right in and get started. So first things first, we just want balance of voices. And so what am I talking about here? We want to make sure that the melody sounds like melody and the stuff that's not melody does not sound like melody. So then the first thing we're going to look at is what is the melody. And so stems up are melody, stems down are not melody. And so then the first thing that we can do is to just play these lines separately. And the fingering doesn't really matter as much for this. We just want to get it in our ear so that we know what it is that we're wanting to hear. And now we can play the bass. So we can do these separately. Now when we put them back together, there are some notes that are going to be problematic, or they're going to be the ones that you will have to watch out for. In this case, those notes are going to be this second beat right here, because that's the note that if we play it too loud, it's going to sound like melody, and it's not. That's not what the piece is. That's the piece. So then the first thing that we're going to do is just to make sure, and if we only did this, it would still be what the piece would be so much more beautiful. So we're going to make sure that we don't play these loud. We're going to play these soft. So that's our very first thing to do. Quiet. Quiet. And when I mean quiet, I mean really pull it back. So in your practice, you want to be exaggerated in all of your dynamics. Dynamics, swells and fades, louds and softs. So whenever you play something soft in your practice, play it really soft. Because then when you perform with people, if you're a little bit nervous or tense or something like that, even if that's not on your radar now, when you play it through and there's all these other things going on, chances are it won't be as much. It'll compress and you won't play it as quietly. So really practice being exaggerated with everything that you do phrase-wise in your practice. So that's the balance of the voices. The other thing, and I mentioned this in an earlier video, but I'll mention it again, and that's don't flam the double stops. Isn't that a bunch of jargon? So flam is offsetting the notes, and a double stop is when 2 notes play at the same time. I think it's a violin term or something. But on these points, it's the downbeat of every measure. Don't let the notes be offset. Play them at the same time. That's the way to say that. Boom, not offset. So make sure that you're always playing them very precisely, right in time, and at the exact same time. Unless you don't want to, unless you specifically want to offset them for a reason that you can articulate to somebody. If you can explain to somebody why you want to do that and it's a really good reason, well then by all means. So the next thing we'll look at here is the shape. And so now we're going to start talking about dynamics. And there are a lot of different different thoughts on this and everything. The way that I go about these, I learned from a really good concert pianist, world-renowned, and has been in the piano tradition for a long time. And this is something that works 85-95% of the time. And so it's a great place to start. And that is when things are going down, when a melody line is going down, like this first 3 notes, then get louder. And if it's going up, then get quieter. And that way the line continues to go. So the line, that means that the attention, the listener's attention, will continue to be held. It doesn't stop and start constantly. Instead, it turns the music into one continuous thing instead of all these little bitty bits. Composers give us bits, we have to make lines out of them, so that it's just like pulling a string of taffy, and it just continues to just lengthen and lengthen and lengthen instead of bit, bit, bit. So this is one way that we can do that. So then we can quickly look, if the notes are going down, get louder. If they're going up, get quieter. It's going down, and this is just melody we're talking about, going up. So then this is something that you can just always do in your music, and that can just help you to guide, is something getting louder or is something getting quieter? Now, there are exceptions to these rules, and sometimes other rules that we can have for these, and we just say they're rules, but I mean, they're meant to be broken as well. Sometimes they conflict, and then we have to decide which one am I going to have to do, and that comes with experience and experimentation and everything else. So with this, then we can just practice. We start, we get louder, and now we're going to get quieter. And now we're going to get louder and then quieter. And so we can just do this for the whole piece, and we can shape that in that way. Then we can put it in with the bass. So that way we can do it with the bass, and with also now making sure that we don't play this loud. So now we've got a lot of stuff going on, right? So we're balancing all these different issues all at the same time. And that's what makes this type of practice so fun, is because it's so challenging. But we can separate them and just do one thing at a time, and that's going to make it much better. So that way we don't have to try to track everything all at once right at the very beginning. We can just do the melody, just put that phrasing in there, and we can just do the playing, not worrying about the dynamics, just pulling that second beat note back, all of that. Now there's another rule, and then I'm just going to stack these on you. You can just do with them what you will. And that's called the long short. And I've written a lot about this in other places. If we have, like, these are 3 evenly coming notes, right? 3 and 1. Bop, bop, bop. If there are 3 or more notes like this following a long note, like this one, then the simple thing is, the simple way to say this is the first note's quiet. Really, to connect the lines, just like we were just talking about, then we want to let this note finish that note. So that we have, and so ideally, the perfect level for that note to come in at is the note at which this one has decayed to. So on the guitar, notes fade so fast, it usually just means play the first note of the set quietly. So that note, the first note, we can just think about it, splitting these eighth notes. The first one finishes the stuff that comes before. The second one leads to the thing going next. And so then this is the way that you can always, this is also a thing called note, there's a pair of notes. And so when we have a pair of notes like this, it's never ba, ba, ba. It's always da, da, da. So the first one finishes something, and then the second one leads forward. So the 2 notes have different roles here. So ba, boom, da, dum is the way that we do that. So then that means play the first note of every bunch quiet. That's what we're coming into, which means that one, and every other one that comes along. So and here, off, and here. I use these words, and here, off is the long short, so just off, long, off, and here, off, and here. Now if you're going louder, if the line's going down, then it just fits right in. If it's going up, then the first notes, we might have to crescendo towards the second note and then back off on the top one. And let's look at that in the next line. So down here in the third line in this, the third 4-bar phrase of this, then we have these eighth notes going up like this, right? So then when we have that, we can still say, okay, well, this is a long short. That's going to fade off to that. So decrescendo to that. That one's quiet. Now we're going up, so we need to get quieter, but we're already quiet, right? So then what do? And so that means that we need to bring out this note, get louder to this note, and then back off to that one. So then if we look at that, off and here. So bring out this note on those lines. Same thing right here. Bring out that one because this one's quiet. That needs to get quieter from that note to that note. And so then we can have that. That's the way we're sculpting it. So each note has its particular volume that it needs to be in relationship to the other notes around it. And so then the more that we can be aware of this and the more that we can practice this and look for it and actually make that happen, we become better and better musicians. So, and this is the way the music becomes more and more beautiful as well. So really fun, really satisfying practice. It also just turns these easy pieces, quote unquote, level 1 pieces into real thorny technical problems for advanced players. In measures 7 and 8, we have the ending of the first half of this. And this, we also have this little lift right here, this little breath mark. Well, the distinguishing feature also of this is this right here, and that's the B that hangs over. And so this is called a suspension. So it was a B, and then we kept the B, and then it goes up to the C, because really it wants to be. That's what it wants to be, but instead we go, which is lovely. Because that's a special thing, right? We don't want to assume people will get it. We want to really present it with them. We want to demonstrate what's going on, and we'll do that by making that a little bit long, a little bit heavier. We want to bring it out instead of just skating right over it. Make it slightly long, dum, ba, dum, da, da, dum, and really slur off to that. I don't mean do a hammer on. I mean just play the second one quieter. Don't accent that C. Dum, ba, dum, da, da, and then come right back into your phrase with everything else that's going on. Great. Now let's talk about the rhythm here just for a second. In this, well, throughout the piece with this second beat. Whenever we have this second beat like this, it's best to place this note really intentionally so that we have dun 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 instead of ba 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 da 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 da. So place it right down. It's still quiet. It's almost late. It's not late. It's still on time. But it's as late as the law allows with it still being on time. So it means we just place it. And so then when we get to the second half of this, it's called an agogic accent. But we do it really quietly because it's just the bass. And so what it gives us is real structure in the bottom line, in the bass line. It gives us very solid structure. And that way, if we want to take some kind of time or anything like that on the top end, on the melody, then we've got that underpinning really strong so that we can do that and it doesn't sound weird. So then once we get into the third line, we start playing on every other measure. We start playing on that beat, right? Here, here. Then we start playing on that second beat. There. So we want to do it so that just like we had the B in measure 8 at the end of the first phrase, this is a new special thing, right? So we don't want to just act like it's not happening. We want to demonstrate it to the audience that don't place it. So don't just run through it. We don't want to make a huge deal out of it, but we want to definitely say there's something different going on here, right? And this is that's the embellishment of this second half, is that we're doing that. That's the difference, right, between the first half and the second half, is that. So we want to make sure that people actually hear that. And so in your practice, exaggerate it and then just give it a nudge whenever you're actually playing it. Dum, ba, da, da, dum. So just make sure that it doesn't speed up or go too fast or anything like that. It doesn't sound good that way. Place it instead. It just gives it a little bit of solidity and rigidity, which sounds bad in a flowy song, but it actually makes it more flowy because of the safety that gives listeners, the rhythmic security. The last thing I'll mention phrasing-wise is this end here of how we get into this last chord. And so if you'll notice, we have a A, and then the top note is the E, and so that's kind of the melody note, right? That's kind of the melody note. So one of the things that we want to make sure to not do is to kill this A before this chord starts playing. So it's really easy to do, to have a lift right there in a gap. So just make sure that that doesn't happen by either going through with the thumb and making sure that you don't touch any string before the thumb strums through it, or if you're doing the PPAMI, then not putting everything down all at once at the very beginning and waiting until you get to that string before you put things down. It's like the timing issue of your preparation of your right hand here on that last one. But the main thing is just to trust your ear. So just make sure that it blends really well and there isn't a lift or a jarring space right there at the end. All right, that's been a lot of stuff that we have just gone through with Vacances. Hope you've enjoyed this foray into the tune. I certainly have. It's a great one, so beautiful. And if you haven't, please subscribe to this channel. And also, if you don't have this RCM Bridges Level 1 book, I would get it even if you're a highly advanced player. I've benefited so much from working through the pieces in this and doing use them as musicality and phrasing studies, memorization studies, all kind of stuff. So really, really good stuff. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the near future. Bye-bye.